sometimes even though, Joe, is what you're saying, if you don't like a team, if the numbers make sense, like I think they do today, you still got to back them if you think you can make some money. They're a slight favorite here today in the ACC. Let's flip it over to the Big 12, who I think is the best conference overall in basketball. 2 games lined up, one at 7 o'clock, one at 9:30 tonight. Texas Tech and Houston, and Baylor and Iowa State. If we start with Houston, that's a heavy number. Overnight, -7.5 to FanDuel Sportsbook. Open that one up. Now we shift up to 9.5, so close to a double-digit favorite for Houston. Also, the total line, a 132.5, now drops to a 131.5 here at FanDuel. Game number 2 is Baylor and Iowa State. If you're also looking for offense, you're probably not going to get a ton of it here. 136.5 was the overnight number. That's been bet down to 133.5, and a number that's staying static here at -1.5. 4 really good basketball teams today in the Big 12, Joe. What are you taking a look at down there?
Yeah, well, so let's just move on and all agree that Houston wins here. Pop Isaacs is not making 97 shots here in this game like he did against BYU. This is a different animal altogether. I mean, Houston came out against a very desperate TCU team, and I felt like they played the entire first half without making a bucket, TCU. That is a totally different team. Houston, this is the time of year in which they kick it into another gear. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. With me, Houston first half, always, because that is the style of play. They frustrate you, and they usually end up going into the break with a very nice lead, usually 8-12 or more points. I think the same thing happens here against Texas Tech, who will have to play catch up in all of this. I could not have been more impressed. I was on Baylor last night against Cincinnati. I mean, 3rd game in a row for Cincinnati. At one point, you just kind of felt like the wheels were going to fall off, and it eventually did, although they hung tough most of that game. But I do think Baylor is got the talent to go toe-to-toe in a championship matchup against Houston. I still like Houston to win it, but don't be shocked if that's maybe the game of all of these conference tournaments with Baylor and Houston coming up.
All top 4 of the 4 seeds in the Big 12 tournament will play on semifinal Friday. By the way, that first half number in favor of the Cougs in the opening game, now 4.5, with where the market has moved from 7 and a hook overnight now to 9.5, nearly a double-digit spread in favor of Houston. It's a good look from Joe Ranieri. Iowa State, -125 money line, +104, not the largest margin on the other side for Baylor. What a nightcap in Kansas City. And in the Big East tournament, inside Madison Square Garden, you could not ask for much more in the opener on semifinal Friday. It is UConn. It is St. John's. The Huskies, a 9.5-point favorite against the Red Storm. The over-under 145.5. Joe, share some thoughts on Providence and Marquette for sure at the end. But again, on the marquee, inside the world's most famous arena, Rick Pitino and his St. John's team on a 6-game win streak. On the other side, it is the dominant Connecticut Huskies, the reigning national champs, taking on St. John's. You could not ask for more. What will we see with all the hype and the excitement around the atmosphere inside the Garden on this Friday?
Yeah, well, that's the problem, right? Because it means we're probably going to get another blowout here is what it means when all the numbers and all the indicators are. Listen, St. John's has been playing, and this is important to remember, right? Because it matters come conference tournament time heading into March Madness. Those teams that rev up and start playing their best basketball heading into conference tournaments, and then they can take that and roll that in to doing some damage come the tournament time here. And that's what St. John's has done. I mean, they have figured some things out there. Rick Pitino, the Colonel Sanders suit and all, has finally gotten through to these guys. And that was a very, very impressive win against a very tough Seton Hall team. And they bullied them around. I kind of think that's what we're going to get here. This is going to be a street fight here between UConn and the Johnnies. Ultimately, the number is over the top. And yes, the only way to bet a side on this would be to take the points with the Johnnies. Having said that, I do think maybe the under might be a better look because I think there's going to be a lot of bodies banging around in here. I do not think the Johnnies want to get into a track meet with UConn in any way, shape, or form. By the way, they went 4 of 14 the last time they played from deep. So I don't think all of a sudden the threes are going to start falling for them. I think the under is the best way to look here, but there is no way I'm betting against UConn in any way, shape, or form.
Take a look there. The second game real quick here in the Big East is that game between Providence and Marquette. You take a look at Marquette as the favorite here. Not sure if their superstar player is going to come back to the court tonight, but can Providence continue this run where maybe they get their dancing shoes on in the Garden?
So let me ask you a question here, and honestly, was that game against Creighton more a statement about Providence or just how ridiculous betting on McDermott and Creighton is in big games? Like, stop it, will you? I mean, it was 9, then it got bet all the way down to 6.5, 7 at the break, and Creighton throws up all over themselves. But hey, listen, Providence is playing with house money, and Marquette showed you how tough they could be yesterday, even without Kolek in the lineup here. I do think Providence just has far too many weaknesses here, and I do think Shaka Smart can get it done with Marquette eventually. I mean, big deal. Congratulations. You're going to win the battle, and you're eventually going to lose the war in the Big East.
We will see what the status is for Tyler Kolek. He was ruled out early yesterday for Marquette's first game in the Big East tournament against Villanova, but his status uncertain for the remainder of Marquette's time in New York City. Now we go to the Pac-12 tournament semifinal Friday out in Las Vegas. Arizona absolutely demolishes USC, exacting some revenge yesterday from the regular season finale in LA. They win by 21, 70-49, easily covering as a favorite in that matchup. Now a double-digit favorite against Oregon. Washington State, who has often been booked as a dog in Pac-12 play this year, getting 2.5 points from Colorado. When you look at that, Joe, is that one of the lines where the Buffs are favored? Colorado has now won 6 consecutive games that you say the line might make sense and we should read between those tea leaves.
Yeah, well, absolutely here. I mean, listen, in conference tournament time, when you get low numbers like this, when you get nearly pick-em prices here, Ben, like you got with Washington State and Colorado, right? They're coin flip games. So I usually lean towards the dogs in these spots and take the points, whether it be 2, 2.5, 3, whatever it may be here. I think Washington State has proven this year that they were undervalued. The market never really adjusted to them throughout the season. Colorado has been hit or miss. I mean, Colorado's going to crash the boards like nobody's business, right? They did it last night, but congratulations. I mean, okay, you beat Utah. Let's not get crazy here. We all knew Utah had its limitations here. Colorado was a fun team, but I am not buying them here. I think Washington State getting points. They have played the disrespected card all season. I think they continue to do that. They eventually get a win, and ultimately, Oregon is an absolute fade for me. How they won that game last night is still head-scratching. They have been hurt. They have not. Dana Altman said, I was afraid to even hold practices last week, given the fact that most of these guys are all injured. We couldn't even put out a team. They come out on the court finally last night. They win a game, but I think it ends for Dana Altman in Oregon after this game against Arizona.
Down in the SEC, it just means more in Nashville. The teams off a bye come into play today. It's Tennessee, it's Auburn, it's Kentucky, Alabama. Obviously, we don't have the time to hit all of those games. Is there one of those top seeds that you might see getting upset today down in the SEC, Joe?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting, right? I mean, when you look at the gauntlet that Tennessee has had to go down the stretch, they've played, I believe, the 10th hardest schedule in conference this year. I mean, look at the games. I mean, they lost to Kentucky on senior day, right? The last game out. But prior to that, they had been on the road. They were winning games against Alabama, South Carolina. I mean, that schedule has been brutal. And, oh, yeah, by the way, Mississippi State already beat them in a game earlier this year here. Styles make fights. It's a tough fight for Tennessee against Mississippi State. I'm wondering if maybe that schedule starts to catch up with them, and I hope they do. This way, North Carolina can get that final number 1 seed in the bracket here, because if Tennessee wins their tournament, Tennessee is going to be a number 1 seed.
Completely agree. The Vols very much in play for that 4th and final 1 seed. We'll show you the 4 games on quarterfinal Friday in the Big Ten tournament in just a little bit. But I do want to mention Alabama, Florida for a 3rd time this year. Total 170.5. I kind of like the over, as we have seen in the first two meetings, each with a total in the mid-170s. Joe Ranieri, enjoy the weekend. We appreciate the time. We round out this second hour next.